Hi, I'm Alex from the Zscaler Customer Success and Engineering team. In this series of short videos, we're taking a look at the baseline recommendations for the configuration of a data protection policy inside ZIA. This is the final part, Part 10, Incident Notification and Workflow Automation. First, let's take a look at the basic form of DLP notification, which you always have access to regardless of your license level. Email notifications are configured with templates, and those templates are referenced inside your DLP policy. The notification template is configurable using macros. In this case, we've configured the example template with the URL access macro, the triggered DLP violation engines, the dictionaries, and the content that matches that trigger. Note also that you can enable the attach violating content option, which will then attach the file containing the data to the notification email for your auditors to review. Next, let's talk about the Zscaler Incident Receiver. The Incident Receiver is a VM that sits inside your environment. This VM establishes a secure channel to the Zero Trust Exchange. The Zero Trust Exchange then pushes incident data in real time. The incident receiver is able to store that data on a file storage system, allowing your SIEM or incident management solutions to read that incident data. These incidents are stored as a full copy of a file or web transaction for the SIEM to digest. This allows you to fully integrate the Zscaler data protection systems with your SIEM and monitoring solutions. Next, let's talk about workflow automation. Workflow automation works by integrating your DLP applications with workflow automation. This means that when a policy is triggered by a user action, workflow automation will handle the incident. The user will be prompted via a survey template to provide a justification for why they're violating a DLP policy. Based on the type of incident and your workflow automation configuration, i.e. which incident groups the incident has been mapped to, the incident will then be assigned to administrators. These administrators will receive a notification via Teams, Slack, or email. You can then configure workflow automation to take one of two actions. Either allow the administrators to manually review the DLP incident and make an appropriate decision, or set up an automated workflow. For example, labeling the incident, sending it to an approver or escalating it to a manager, notifying the user, creating a ticket in a platform such as ServiceNow or Jira, and closing the incident once it's resolved. Let's take a look at some of the best practices for configuring workflow automation. First, you should base your workflow automation configuration on your corporate data security policy. You'll want to build custom notification survey and digest templates, configure incident groups and mappings beforehand, use labels to classify and analyze incidents so that you can assign those incidents to appropriate admin groups. You can then baseline and test the system with manual incident responses. Here, it's beneficial to use SCIM for user mapping. Finally, you can create workflows based on what you've observed from your baseline testing. A good example use case for workflow automation would be to configure it so that you have a low count of rules covering only high severity incidents and using workflow automation for a quick incident response, thereby allowing you to monitor and secure your most sensitive data as quickly and efficiently as possible. Finally, let's take a look at how to configure workflow automation. First, you should define incident groups. These are the baseline building blocks of workflow automation and contain the information and criteria required to classify your incidents. Incident groups can be used to group individual incidents together by mapping one or more of the incident attributes. The incident groups can then be assigned to restricted administrators who will manage the incidents. The next step is then to assign administrators to incident groups. Here it's required that you assign only incident groups that are required for each administrator. Different administrators might have different access to incidents, for example, by region, department, country, etc. By assigning incident groups to administrators, you'll provide incident access only to the approved staff. The next step is to map priorities and assign labels. Configuring priorities will allow your administrators to prioritize incidents correctly. Additionally, labels can be used as filters in the dashboard to view only relevant content. Configuring this incident classification system will significantly speed up resolution of critical incidents. The next step is to define workflows. Zscaler Workflow Automation comes with several predefined templates. It's suggested that you review the available workflow templates and create workflows based on your specific needs, either reusing these templates or creating them from scratch. Workflows will allow the automation of tasks mapped to one or more of the attributes available in an incident transaction. For example, they can allow you to notify users, managers, or approvers while changing the incident status in an automated way. This means that your auditors will no longer have to handle incidents manually. You should also create custom notification templates. Notification templates will be used to send information to users or incident managers, including next steps. Customizing the templates is recommended to include only relevant details that need to be shared with the user. You should also create survey templates. These are used by end users to justify DLP violations. Options for what the surveys look like can be fully customized depending on your business requirements. This will allow users to select specific reasons to justify why their transactions are required for their business workflows. Note that workflow automation allows you to hide specific types of data from incidents. Here it's recommended that you only hide data that will not be used for incident management purposes. Privacy settings can be adjusted to restrict access to DLP evidence data, trigger data, or policy details, for example. Next, it's recommended you configure integrations. This will allow you to integrate workflow automation with different ticketing systems like Jira or ServiceNow, or communication tools like Microsoft Teams or Slack. This means that when incidents are generated, workflow automation can notify users or administrators, as well as create or close tickets. This will significantly simplify managing DLP incidents. Next, you'll want to create granular access controls inside ZIA and Z-Identity for workflow automation. This will allow you to control which administrators have access to the workflow automation tool to prevent access to sensitive data for unapproved administrators. Similarly, workflow automation has RBAC settings. Note that these are separate from the ZIA RBAC settings. Here, it's recommended that you create different data access roles depending on the role of the administrator. Some administrators may only need to control the workflow automation tool, while others may need full access to the platform, including evidence data. This allows you to make sure that administrators only have visibility of the data resources they're allowed to access. Finally, once you've configured your workflow automation systems, including your incident groups, administrator groups, prioritization, labeling, and workflows, you'll need to modify your existing DLP policies to add an incident receiver to the DLP rules that will generate an incident in workflow automation. Each DLP rule needs to be configured separately to send the incident to the correct DLP incident receiver. The incident receiver will then forward the incident to workflow automation. That's it for this video, and this concludes our video series on the baseline recommendations for configuring a data protection policy inside ZIA. Thank you for watching.